What is the deal, beautiful people? My name is Ramon. Welcome to the channel here where we talk any and everything photography. And this is an excerpt from a very interesting conversation I had with a friend. He came into the studio and he saw like my collection of cameras. Go, whoa, what's like, is there an upside to owning all of these different cameras? And I really had to put some thought into that, and I think there's a lot of upside to it. There's a lot of lessons learned from it. But yeah, I think it's a conversation I want to share with you guys. So for those of you who are new to the channel, you may not know, I do enjoy shooting with many different cameras. I've got a Sony a7 II, so that covers my full frame. I've got a Canon T4i, so that covers my old DSLR game. I've got a Sony NEX. It's my APS-C. I have many two or three micro four thirds cameras. I've got old cameras. So I've got my Fuji X-T2. There's a lot about yes, you could say, and I did a video a while back about GAS, and you could say I have GAS, which stands for Gear Acquisition Syndrome, but I love owning so many different experiences, right? Each camera system gives you a different experience, and it's not always the image quality. I couldn't really care about image quality because, one, you spend so much time learning the exposure triangle, you know how to properly expose an image. And I think the difference between these cameras in terms of image quality can be nominal, and that's just my opinion, who cares? And then secondly, we've come so far in the post-editing game that it doesn't matter what you take an image with, you can still execute on your creative vision. So there's that. But yeah, I think there's so many unique experiences that each camera offers you, and I really, really enjoy each one. For instance, the Fuji is such a tactical experience, and it makes it prime for the street. And you get into this groove of click, that's 2 stops, and you know exactly where you're going, and you're adjusting dials without pulling the camera away from your eye. And then there's the Sony and the A7, my full frame. I get the best quality possible out of that, and I enjoy editing and seeing how far I can push the raw files, and I enjoy a lot about that. And in the micro four thirds, I just enjoy having a camera with me at all times. You know what I mean? So there's each of them have their own thing that I think is very much enjoyable. The number one thing that I've learned from owning all of these camera systems is there really is no perfect camera. I could tell you things about each one that I love, and there are things about them that I also don't love. For instance, micro four thirds, specifically the Olympus, right? Because I also got Panasonic. The quality of the lenses are amazing, right? And so shocking that I almost wish I almost wish Olympus would make full frame lenses for Sony like that. That would be such a treat. I would love to see that. But yeah, the lenses are incredibly sharp, incredibly well made. They're beautiful to look at, if that's a thing for a lens, right? And they're very affordable. That's the killer. And then also, they're super small, super tiny. The entire micro four thirds system is very portable. I love that about it. And then it's the sensor problem. Micro four thirds is roughly half the size of a full frame sensor, and for half the size, you could argue, a little bit of a contradiction to what I just said, but you could argue you're not getting the entire image quality experience of a full frame, which doesn't really bother me. But what bothers me on micro four third is I always have to be cognizant of noise, and I can't take that sensor, I can't push that sensor too high in my image compositions. But nonetheless, I love it. Then there's a Sony. What I love about Sony as a I'm an IT professional for about 20 years now, technologist. I love technology. Sony kind of just fill that gap for me. For the super techie amongst you, you know, kind of like the Samsung and the Android world, where you want every single feature possible and you want it to be all cutting edge and the biggest numbers and the bleeding edge of technology. That's where Sony generally plays, and it's kind of nice to see that, right? Like, yeah, I guess I'll take the Ferrari, why not? And then the downside of Sony is it's expensive to play in that world. The lenses are pricey, the bodies are pricey. You know, it's you gotta have some money to play. Will you have some fun if you play? Yeah, for sure. But there it is. And then Fuji, man, Fuji, it took me a while to put my X-T2 down. I don't know. It's such an amazing experience shooting with a Fuji. The camera itself, it's a beautiful camera to look at. It feels amazing. There's dials and buttons all over the place and where they should be. And then the images themselves, the JPEGs that come out of Fuji are unrivaled. You damn near don't need to do any type of editing in Fuji, and that's so attractive to me when doing like street type work. And I really, really love it for that. In terms of the downside, I guess I could say I wish it had a full frame sensor if I was being picky, but I've never once looked at one of my Fuji images and thought, oh man, there's too much noise, or I wish I had a little bit more megapixels to crop in and maintain detail. Like, I don't know, I guess there is no downside to Fuji. I just love Fuji. I don't know what to tell you. So that's that. And the second thing that I've learned about or come to appreciate from owning so many different cameras is I had this scenario in my head. You know, I'll be going somewhere and, you know, we'll get into an elevator, me and a few people around me, and someone's gonna say, you know, Ramon's a pretty good photographer, and then out comes this camera, you know, like Grand Theft Auto, how people change weapons and then it just appears out. Someone pulls out a camera and says, oh yeah, do something, let me see. You know, I don't ever want that to happen and they pull out like a Canon and I go, I don't use Canon. I don't know how to use this, or, you know, I don't know, I can't get used to where this button is, or they pull out a Pentax or some shit. I'm like, I always want to avoid that. And I really enjoy the journey of every time I get a new camera, you know, I reacclimate myself between the ergonomics and the features of the camera and the exposure triangle. And I think it made me a better technical photographer, right? Because there are things that work on camera A that doesn't work on camera B, but the concepts are still the same. You still need to go through that logical process, that delicate dance within the exposure triangle. And I'm happy to say I can do it with pretty much any camera system. And it just feels good to know that there's a versatility to my skill set. That may be a very trivial thing for most people, but for me, you know, it was worth the investment in all the different systems. And then third is I generally have an affinity for this craft as a whole. You know, I didn't get pigeon-toed or held into one camera system and only know this and only know and not know the amazing things that other camera systems have to offer. So much so that today, if I think, okay, I want to go out and do X, Y, and Z, I know what camera I'm gonna grab, what camera and lenses. And I purposely acquired my cameras and their respective camera systems in a very specific way to not overlap functionality. So for instance, my Fuji, I still didn't buy a prime for that. I've got the regular kit lens on there, which is probably the best kit lens known to man, right? That's my street monster. I don't want to put a prime on there because I don't want to go through the, oh man, I wish, let me switch this, no, I'll just leave the default kit lens on there and rock out. And then there's my Olympus. My Olympus has two real purposes. One, that's what I use for my super telephoto images, and that's also what I use for my portraits, right? Because it's got I've got the 150 to 300 on there, which is really a 300 to 600 millimeter lens. I can see Jesus with that lens. And then I've got the 45 millimeter, which is really an 85, and it's an amazing portrait lens. And that's where that is. And then I've got my Sony, which is kind of well-rounded in the way it's built, but is more for my paid and professional work. So if I need to do something, there's a camera that I will pick up that will fill that purpose. And I think it goes a long way into giving me an appreciation for just all things photography and all things camera, and not really just create this toxic fanboy in myself. Although, I gotta tell you, if I'm gonna fanboy, I'm probably gonna fanboy out on Fuji. I love Fuji. I don't know what else to say about that, but let me know if you guys out there are also invested in multi-company camera systems. Was there a better way to say that? Do you own different cameras from different manufacturers, and do you enjoy it? Thank you so much for checking out the video. Hit the like button if you like it. Hit the comment section down below with any suggestions or questions you may have. And please subscribe to the channel. Helps me grow. And I know a lot of you who watch the videos aren't subscribed because YouTube analytics tells me so. My name is Ramon. I'm out of here. Peace.